In this go-for-a-punch world in which we live, where we spend our days with SpongeBob SquarePants and our nights strolling London after midnight, you may think you've heard of everything we've yet to find. But there is more unknown in this world than you could possibly imagine. This is lesser-known lost media.
Welcome back, everybody, to Volume 19, wow, of Lesser Known Lost Media, the show where I cover lost media that just doesn't get as much publicity as some of the more popular ones you hear about on YouTube. I, of course, am your host, Mr. Sean, and since it is now officially October, I'm going to try and do a lesser known lost media video once per week for the next 4 weeks, and each time all of the pieces of lost media covered are going to be somehow horror themed. Now, as you know, if you've seen this series before, and if you haven't, of course, welcome. You can watch these in any order. Well, how we do this here is we start with 4 perfectly safe for work, family-friendly pieces of lost media, and end with a not safe for work piece of lost media. And in between the safe for work and the not safe for work, I do a brief ad roll for my business, Chimera Miniatures. So we're going to get into the lost media here in just a second, but I wanted to take a moment to tell you my goals and my plans for the remainder of the year, and I need your help to achieve them. Now, at the time of recording this, we are at 471 subscribers on the channel, which is amazing. We started this year at less than 50 subscribers, so to now have 471, amazing. Thank you all so much. But I think we can do better. By the end of 2023, I think we can have at least 600 subscribers. I would love to say that I think we can get to 1,000, but honestly, I feel like that is a milestone that we will cross sometime next year. But still, let's try to get to 600. And the best way you can help me do that is by liking, by subscribing yourselves if you haven't already, and of course, leaving a comment. The more you engage with these videos, the more times it's going to show up in people's algorithms. Also, if you have someone who you think would like this content, please share the video with them. I would love for these videos to reach even more people than they are now, and I think you can help me make that happen. Also, by the end of 2023, I would like to have at least 10 patrons subscribe to my Patreon. Right now, I have 1, and while I am very thankful for that 1, again, I think we can do better. So if you'd like to help support the channel, please go and just sign up for whatever tier you are comfortable with. Whether that is the $3, $5, or $10 tier does not matter. Your support is appreciated. And as to the mini sales, last year I was averaging about $400 in sales a month on my minis. These days it's down to about $75 to $100 a month. Again, I know that the economy is rough, but I think we can do better. I'm not saying we need to get back up to $400 right away, but if I could start averaging about $200 in sales a month, that would help me out, and that would make it much easier for me to continue to make content. So if you'd like to check out the links, eBay, Etsy, or Mercari, and maybe buy a mini. A lot of them start at just $5. Not that hard. Christmas is coming up. Get something for that person in your life who has everything, but they don't have this one-of-a-kind mini, or they don't have this not safe for work mini. Also, if you would like a shout out on the channel, if you purchase a mini, please message me after doing so and tell me that you found my minis via this channel and what name you would like me to shout out, and I'll give it a shout out. Also, if there's a particular type of mini that you would love to see made that you'd like for either yourself or someone you know, message me. I can probably make it happen. And with all that being said, again, thank you so much for listening to my little business pitch. Let's get into that sweet, sweet lost media. At number 1, we have Eternal Darkness, the lost build of the finished Nintendo 64 survival horror game circa 1998 to 2000. Nintendo is certainly known for its proprietary properties, mainly characters and games you will not find on other systems, and while not nearly as popular as some of Nintendo's other proprietary titles, Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, which is a Nintendo game for the Nintendo GameCube that was released on June 24th, 2002, has become a bit of a cult hit. However, it was originally developed as an N64 game in 1999. The story was to follow the return of the Ancients, a tribe that existed before humanity on their hunt to claim Earth. 13 people from different times periods all unite in order to destroy the Ancients once and for all and save the Earth. The game was in the final stages of development before it was scrapped on November 29th of 2000 in favor of remaking the game for the newly released Nintendo GameCube. Eternal Darkness was during development the first Nintendo 64 game that ran at 640 by 480 resolution without the use of the RAM expansion pack, but using it was optional. The only thing that would happen was additional effects. It was reportedly so unbelievable that Nintendo inspected the development kit that the game was running on just to make sure the expansion pack wasn't installed. A new cartridge was developed with a capacity of 256 megabits, and this was done because it was required just to support all of the voice lines, which were recorded in Dolby surround sound. Now, some of the differences between the N64 version and the one we got on the GameCube: the character of Michael Edwards was going to be a Gulf War commando, but after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, he was changed to be a firefighter instead. Sanity effects were also meant to play along throughout an entire level until the player managed to increase their sanity high enough again. The game was also meant to be 60 to 80 hours long and would have ended in many different ways, unlike the GameCube release, which would take about 7 hours with only 2 endings. This counts the special ending after beating the game 3 times. Most of the endings made one of the 4 Ancients, the bosses in Eternal Darkness, take over Earth. The camera was also a lot stiffer in the N64 version and featured less cinematic camera movements from going one place to the other. Another big difference was the character of Joseph de Molay. Now, Joseph was a major character who was a Templar Knight. However, he only made a small cameo in the GameCube version during the end of Roberto's chapter and when Rovus gets the 8th chapter. De Molay would have roamed around a castle and was a lot faster than most of the other characters in the game. He was even featured in the 1999 E3 demo of the game. De Molay did eventually get redesigned. His chapter was switched from being set in a castle to the Forbidden City, and he became quite slower than other characters. This character's fate is ultimately unknown. Dennis Diak, the game's director, stated the reason for his departure was because that Joseph was only meant to be seen in E3 demos. This begs the question of why the character was redesigned for the Nintendo 64. In contrast, one of the game's artists stated that the reason for his departure was because of 9/11. Now, I have never played Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, but I have sat and watched one of my buddies play it back in the day, and it was a pretty impressive game, and it sounds like the N64 version was almost going to be even more impressive. So, who knows? Maybe if this game had actually gotten released in its original version, it might have become, a major hit with many sequels, as opposed to the kind of underground, fondly remembered cult hit that it is today. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the version that we got, but it sounds like we could have gotten so much more. At number 2, we have The Television Ghost, a lost early television series circa 1931 to 1933. The Television Ghost was a very early television program broadcast on W2XAB, New York City, an experimental branch of the Columbia Broadcasting System and the predecessor of the current WCBS TV affiliate. In the early 1930s, premiering on August 17, 1931, it was often considered to be the first dramatic television anthology ever made, but no known footage is known to have survived. The show centered around the idea of ghosts telling the stories of how they were murdered. Each episode featured a different story, but the ghost was always played by George Kelting, whose costume involved having his face painted white and a sheet wrapped around him. Due to the technical limitations of the time, the format was closer to that of a radio show, as the video footage only consisted of a continuous shot of Kelting's head and shoulders as he talked. Each broadcast lasted 15 minutes. The series ran for 2 years until it was finalized in 1933, presumably at the same time the W2XAB station suspended operations due to economic turmoil from the Great Depression. Now, given the early nature of television technology, the series had to be broadcast live and was not able to be recorded by the network. In addition, the few people who even owned a television receiver at the time found that the screen was so dim it was barely visible to the naked eye, let alone a film recording. Because of this, the series is unanimously considered to be lost for good, with no chance of it ever resurfacing. The series was also broadcast via radio on W2XE New York City and WABC New York, but no audio recordings have surfaced either, as this was also before radio broadcasts started being regularly preserved. The only elements of the series that exist are a few photographs and a couple of newspaper mentions from the time. This one, I think ultimately it's not going to be found, so that's not the point of me including it here, but I think that it is very interesting that even in the earliest days of television, it was used, there was horror. Horror has always been such a big part of the entertainment industry, and it's interesting that this, one of the pioneering early experimental television programs was literally just a guy dressed up as a ghost telling horror stories. And I just think that's pretty cool, personally. At number 3, we have Dracula, specifically the partially found epilogue scene of the 1931 Universal horror film. Now, Universal's Dracula, classic, you probably already know about it, is a 1931 horror film loosely based on the 1924 play of the same name directed by Todd Browning and Carl Freund, starring Bela Lugosi as Dracula and Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing. The film is seen as a classic by many and is often regarded as the film that made Dracula a popular icon. The initial theatrical run of the film featured an epilogue by Sloan, similar to the prologue he did in Frankenstein, where he directly spoke to the audience. He is known to have said, "Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. A word before you go. We hope the memories of Dracula and Renfield won't give you bad dreams. So just a word of reassurance. When you get home tonight, and the lights have been turned out, and you are afraid to look behind the curtains, and you dread to see a face appear at the window, why, just pull yourself together and remember that, after all, there are such things as vampires." Now, when Dracula was reissued in 1936, the Motion Picture Code, which worked to censor films in order to keep certain morals, was being taken very seriously. As such, the epilogue was removed to avoid contention from religious groups. The epilogue was never restored for any of the future releases. Now, a few stills and a brief clip of the epilogue are featured in the 1999 documentary Road to Dracula. In September of 2021, David J. Skal, the director of Road to Dracula, and noted writer and historian known for his work in the horror genre, was contacted by the Loose Leaf Celluloid podcast and asked about the state of the footage. According to Skal, Universal acquired the only known copy of the sequence from the British Film Institute by the late 90s, as it features severely raggedy jump cuts and is missing portions of the soundtrack. Universal's quality control people deemed it unusable and refused to let it be used in its entirety. So he came up with the solution, and in his documentary, he also stated that a restoration is possible, though he doubts one is likely due to costs. I think this one is especially interesting considering all of the work that has been done to make sure that we have all the pieces of the old MGM horror classics. The Phantom of the Opera alone has so many different cuts out there, and, especially the actor who played Van Helsing, he has the very famous scene at the beginning of Frankenstein, yet somehow, simply, I guess, the only thing I can think of that religious groups would take offense with this movie is that he said there are such things as vampires, and a lot of religious groups don't like to believe that anything of the supernatural exists, which I think is kind of funny, considering they say that, they go by the Bible, and ghosts literally show up in the Old Testament, so I don't understand why they don't believe in the supernatural when their own holy book says it's real. But anyway, this does exist, and apparently it could be restored, and I think that's weird that even though it's expensive, just the state of MGM's, how famous their monster movies are, how they really wanted to make a, expanded MGM monsterverse that didn't get off the ground, not that long ago. I think it's weird that they wouldn't take efforts to preserve and restore this and make it available to the Republic. To the Republic, what is it, Star Wars? To the public. At number 4, we have Little Shop, a partially lost Fox Kids animated series based on the horror comedy film Little Shop of Horror, circa 1991. Little Shop was a French animated television series that aired on Fox and La Cinq, a now defunct French television network, in 1991, inspired by the original 1960 film Little Shop of Horrors and the 1982 off-Broadway musical and the 1986 musical film adaptation of the same name. The plot follows Seymour Krelborn, an adolescent, a self-proclaimed nerd who works in a little flower shop owned by Mr. Mushnick. His daughter, Audrey, is the love of Seymour's life, yet she doesn't seem to notice or even understand his affection. Also, there's a bully named Payne Driller who constantly targets Seymour in his bullying. Seymour has a pet flytrap named Junior. Junior was once a 200 million year old seed until Seymour found him in a junkyard. Once he was cared for by Seymour, he sprouted into a Venus flytrap that raps and talks in a hip-hop dialect. Unlike the films and the musical, where Junior, they're named Audrey too, is an antagonist who forces Seymour to commit murders to satisfy his hunger for human blood, no, in the TV series, Junior is a protagonist that sides with Seymour. The horror elements that were in the previous musical and films were cut in favor for a more child-friendly tone. While the credit for the concept for this adaptation is given to Ellen Levy and Mark Edward Edens, the show was created by Gene Chalpin, best known as the founder of Deke Entertainment and the co-creator of Inspector Gadget, and was produced by animator Tom Tataranowicz, who first did the animation for He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and producer Haim Saban, who would later go on to create Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The music for the series was written by Haim Saban and Shuki Levy. The series stars Jane Alexa as Seymour Krelborn, Jenny Kwan as Audrey Mushnick, Michael Rahl as Mr. Mushnick, Terry McGee as Audrey Jr., and Mark Ryan Martin as Payne Driller. Lisa Paulette is credited as Seymour's singing voice. Roger Corman, the writer and director of the original 1960 film, is also credited as a creative consultant for the series. Now, as to its availability, Little Shop first ran for only 13 half-hour episodes from September 7th to November 30th of 1991. It was rerun until September 5th of 1992, and it was later on the Sci-Fi Channel as part of Cartoon Quest and the Animation Station block until 1997. In January of 2015, only 3 episodes of the show, the pilot episode titled Beth's Bad Seed, the fourth episode, Unfair Science, and the 6th episode, I Loathe a Parade, were known to be publicly available due to VHS recordings that were subsequently uploaded to YouTube. More recently, in December of 2016, 3 additional episodes, the second one, Real Men Aren't Made of Quiche, and the 3rd episode, Back to the Fuchsia, as well as the 5th, Stage Blight, were uploaded by the Little Shop Archive YouTube account. This was closely followed on January 1st of 2017 by an entirety of Air Jr. and the 8th episode, Untitled Halloween Story. The remaining episodes were uploaded on January 2nd, 2017. The only episode that was not uploaded was the English version of It's a Wonderful Leaf, as the DVD copy given to the Little Shop Archive YouTube account was damaged. A mere upload of the German dub of this episode was uploaded in its place. I think this one is interesting for quite a few reasons. One being that I would never think to adapt Little Shop of Horrors into a children's cartoon, but that was the 90s for you. And second, the fact that this one is almost completely found. There's only one episode missing, and that's just the English version of episode 9. So if you happen to have a VHS tape somewhere that features the English version of episode 9, It's a Wonderful Leaf, get that thing uploaded to the archive, to the internet. We almost have this one completely found. Alright everybody, before we get into that final tantalizing piece of not safe for work lost media, let's talk about my miniatures. At Chimera Miniatures, I make all kinds of custom miniatures perfect for your spooky tabletop games. On the screen you can see several of my Kit Bash monsters that would make a standout appearance at any of your next tabletop sessions. But it's not just about the monsters. As my Whiskey Ramblings video about horror movies so frequently says, when it comes to horror movies, sex sells, and so too does it with miniatures, which is why I offer a wide variety of not safe for work repainted miniatures and custom miniatures that feature scantily clad, if clad at all, female characters. Bring some screams to your session or some tits to your tabletop with Chimera Miniatures custom miniatures. And if miniatures aren't really your thing, I have all kinds of other collectibles available on my various websites, eBay, Etsy, and Mercari. Or if you just want to support the channel but you don't want to buy anything, there is always the Patreon with $3, $5, and $10 monthly tiers. With all that being said, let's get to today's final piece of Not Safe for Work Lost Media. At number 5, we have the New York Centerfold Massacre, a partially lost horror film from 1985. The New York Centerfold Massacre is a film where pornographic centerfold models in New York are being slaughtered by an overprotective Christian mother with a potato sack over her head. Her methods contain chugging acid down their throats, knocking them out with a tripod, and shining lights at their faces. The police are investigating to find the one responsible for these grisly murders. This movie never saw a theatrical release, nor was it ever sold in stores. The only way to obtain a copy was through an exclusive mail ordering services ran by Macabre Video Underground. Due to errors both on set and in the final cut, large portions of the film were deleted, while the remainder were lost during a fire. About half of the footage of the New York Centerfold Massacre has never been released, as it was accidentally deleted from the final cut. In an interview with the director Lou Ferroli, in regards to deleted footage, he stated, "The best footage of NYCM was lost not in the fire, but on the set, as a crew member put in a recorded shoot tape as a blank, and so the best slasher scenes in a couple of great buxomy models were erased. And these models really were centerfolds. I couldn't afford to bring them back for another shooting day." All of the master copies of the New York Centerfold Massacre were destroyed when a warehouse that stored the master copies caught fire. As of now, new webcam footage was spliced in the first few minutes of the movie to try and recuperate some of what there was, but most of this film is just gone. Now, if you go to the Lost Media Wiki, you can actually see the footage that is available of this film, and it is bad. Like, I took a quick look. It's terrible. But, there definitely is a market for these things where, if something's so bad it's good, but this literally looks like someone was shooting a 1980s home movie rather than, I've seen low-budget films from the 60s that are better quality than this thing. And unfortunately, half of the footage that was lost, it was literally recorded over with no backups, and they couldn't reshoot it, so there's literally zero chance it will ever be found. But I really, just looking at this film, I think that should have been their cue. Just stop right there rather than keep making it. And hey guys, that's going to be our video today. Thank you so much for tuning into Volume 18, also known as our Horror Edition Part 1. Part 2 will come out next week, and then there will be a 4 parts total of this special horror edition of lesser-known Lost Media. I'm trying to think of something really special to do for Volume 20, considering this will be 20 separate videos of this series, which I feel like is a milestone. So I want to do something special for you guys for it, but I don't know what I'm going to do yet, so you'll just have to tune in to that upcoming video. As always, make sure to check out the rest of my videos. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. When we get to 500 subscribers, we will do another miniature giveaway. So, until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean. This is Chimera Miniatures. I hope you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. And also, stay spooky. Bye-bye.